Hello, everyone. I'm Greg Weaver. Welcome to the Audio Analyst. Pardon me. Some viewers of our first conversation here on the channel, episode 89, Andreas Koch and Digital Recording, which was posted on September 25th of this year, suggested that the information he shared was not only utterly fascinating, but was actually revelatory to some. Now, Andreas had agreed to come back and speak to us after his meeting with Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs in Sebastopol, California. And today, he not only outlines how that consultation on archiving with the use of his Pinot Analog to digital converter went, but he delves even further into the benefits and some surprising observations on the use of DSD for both recording and archiving, as well as for playback. I hope you find this conversation as interesting and enlightening as I have. Here is our conversation.
All right, everybody. He's back again. Andreas Koch from Playback Designs is here to talk to us a little bit about both his products and a meeting he's had with Mobile Fidelity on how they're going to do some archiving moving forward. And we hopefully will talk a little bit about the advantages that he sees to using DSD 256 for mastering records and other things. And the archive quality alone is important. So welcome back, Andreas. How are you?
Thank you. Thanks for having me again. It's always an honor to be with you, Greg.
Well, thank you. The first episode was well received. People seem to really enjoy what you had to share with us, so I appreciate that. And I'm really grateful you're willing to take the time to do this again. So let's start off by talking about Playback Designs. My understanding is right now there are basically two lines. There's the Edelweiss series and the Sonoma series.
No, the Dream series.
Oh, I missed one. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Steve, you need to bring me up to speed on this.
Yeah.
Do you want to walk us through briefly what each line is about and how they work?
Yeah. The Dream series is, as the name probably implies, is the flagship product. We started out with the idea to build the best possible DAC that we could think of by taking all the technology that developed over the last 10 plus years and previously also.
Sure.
And, really make the best possible converter. And the philosophy behind it is also that, and that's our experience over the last 10 years, is to separate the digital inputs, the digital sources, as much as possible from the very sensitive analog circuitry at the back end of the DAC.
That makes sense.
And, putting this all into the same chassis with the same power supply and so forth really is a disadvantage. And there's only so much you can do to separate it and counteract those effects, those negative effects.
Right.
But the best way to really do this is take all the digital sources, the digital receivers outside of the DAC and connect it via a galvanically separating link. And we use the high quality fiber optic link between the digital hub, as I call it, and the DAC.
Sure.
So there's multiple products. There's the DAC, the very pure DAC, and there's really nothing to it. It has all the digital inputs for those people who can't afford or don't want to have a bigger system. But really the best way is to only have one this optical connection to it and have all the other digital standard sources outside of the box.
Okay.
So in that respect, we have the Dream DAC and the Dream Transport, two different products. The Transport is, as the name implies, it's an SSCD CD drive, but you can expand it. It has all the digital inputs like AES and Toslink and so forth, but you can also expand it with a streaming module or a server, a full-fledged server or a root core. Just to configure it any way you want. So all the digital sources, there's really no other digital source you can think of that cannot be integrated into the MPT8.
Wow.
So that's a system. The two you see them actually behind me.
Ah, okay.
Right. These
Yeah.
two are the MPT-8 and the MPD-8. And that's the ultimate system, and you get the ultimate performance. We also have the MPS-8, which is the integration of those two boxes. And if you want to have a smaller system, more compact, we put those two things together. So there's the drive and the DAC and all the digital inputs except for the server that go all into the same box.
But now, does it? Can you add the streamer to that as well?
Yes,
okay.
You can. Yeah,
it's just not a server.
It's not the server, but you can add the streamer to
Good.
it. So that's the Dream system, and this again, was designed for ultimate performance. And based on the same technology, we then developed the Edelweiss series, which is a little bit lower in cost, more compact, and a lighter chassis, a smaller chassis, and but it still borrows quite a bit of technology from the Dream system. And again, there's a DAC, there's a player, and also a streaming or digital interface, and it's basically the same thing as the MPT-8 without the drive in it, because now we're kind of moving away from drives, more towards servers and room core systems and digital inputs.
Sure.
So that's the Edelweiss series, and below that we used to have the Sonoma series, which was an entry level. We only have the Pinot, that's the A to D converter.
A to D converter, okay.
Series, and that converter is now used mostly in studios. Michael Bishop, before he passed away, he used it quite extensively for field recording and just for his daily work.
Well, I know Dr. Robinson has two of the Pinots,
and
he's very impressed.
Too. Yes.
Yeah. All right, so the top series is basically the best thing you can build, cost no object.
It is, yes.
And then the Edelweiss series is maybe a little compromised, but the compromises are made to hit a price point instead of anything else. Yes.
That's right. Yeah, the performance, you'd be hard pressed to really hear the difference. It takes a while to get used to the system and warm it up and so forth. You do hear very similar characteristics. The transient behavior is basically identical because it's the same digital front end. The difference is in the analog output stage.
Well, okay. Well, now that's fascinating. Thanks for sharing that with us. And I apologize that I didn't know the Sonoma series had changed. No I just didn't know. Now, what I find fascinating is last week you went to up to Sebastopol, which is about not quite an hour and a half drive northeast or northwest from where you are. It's above San Francisco. You're off to the east a little bit.
Right.
Now, you had indicated that they wanted to talk to you about doing archiving and moving forward. So what can you share with us about how that meeting went and what they plan to do?
Yeah, that was very interesting. It was basically just a listening test to find out how the converters, our converters, perform versus what they have in their current system.
Okay.
And the way they operate is, they transfer from tape the original masters to the cutting master directly to the cutting lathe.
Okay.
And I don't know if you know how the cutting lathe basically works. You have to have a preview, which basically tells the computer, the cutting computer that directs the cutting stylus, how deep to go, how wide away from the previous track and so forth. There's quite a complicated algorithm in there.
Sure.
So that computer needs to have a preview input. It needs to have information on how loud the next round is going to be, so it can
So it can
calculate.
figure out how to accurately plan for things.
Right. So
Yeah.
how the depth should be and how wide away it needs to be from the previous track and so forth. So there's quite a bit of a complicated algorithm.
Makes
But
sense, though. Yeah.
it needs to have this information at least one round before the actual music gets in. So, out of 2 channel, you need to have a preview and then the real track, the real stereo track. So you play twice
Okay.
with a variable delay, and that's something we still need to work on. And then we would have a system with our A to D, the Pinot, and we'll modify that also a little bit, and a special purpose DAC that will develop so it can interface with the lathe.
Cool.
So yeah, and with that, we can then archive directly to whatever media they want to connect, but we can also go
I
directly.
assume it would be hard drive mostly. No.
For archiving, you would think yes, it goes to hard drive. Yes, hard drive or flash. If we master directly to disk, then it's going to go to the lathe.
Yeah. So how did the auditions go? What was the result?
Well, it was very good.
Good.
It sounded very good, and they took the files that we created and are going to listen some more and compare to what they have. But we were talking about how to integrate this system into, the converters into what they have and make it all work with their lathe.
So it looks promising, yes?
It is promising. There's still some work to be done, but this is further confirmation that the A to D, the Pinot that we developed, is actually doing exactly what it was designed for.
Yeah.
It was a no compromise A to D that we designed for archiving purposes.
Sure.
But quite a few consumers that bought it also, who wanted to transfer all their vinyls and their tapes to something very high quality digital. And that's exactly what this is designed for. And,
right.
We designed it for performance.
You probably have some, well, certainly a great understanding of, but probably some strong opinions about mastering from DSD, from, say, a DSD 256. Now, David and I spoke about this at some length. He believes in it very strongly. Some of the listening tests he's been involved with, he said that there were occasions on these listening tests where, with matched volumes, the master tape played back versus the DSD recording played back, most of the time they preferred the DSD playback. And I'm wondering if you can expand on I think there's an understanding out there that you can't really do a lot of editing in DSD, but my understanding are there things like this plangent process that will let you help correct for like wow and flutter and scrape issues on tape and things like that. So if there's a way you might be able to give us a sense of what you feel the advantages are to mastering records from DSD.
Yeah, there's really, before you do a recording and the mastering, you have to decide, is this going to be a high quality recording, a high quality master, a high quality release? And of course, we always strive for best quality, but then there's budget constraints and time constraints and so forth. So that's when people start to cut corners. But if the answer is yes to all those three, and then it's all best quality achievable, then we hire the best recording engineer who knows how to place the microphones properly and do minimal processing in production and minimal processing in the transfer and mastering. And at that point, you end up with a master that doesn't really need any editing, because as soon as you start editing in the production, anywhere in the production, you lose quality. And the more you do that, the more quality you lose. So
Sure.
if really the target is to do everything high quality, for an audiophile release, you're not going to do any editing or very, very little, just cut and splice. And that's relatively easy with DSD. So if you record in quality, you want to produce high quality production, then DSD is really a good format. It's a high quality format. Yes, it is somewhat limited in production methodologies or production technologies because it's gets all the existing tools convert to PCM, high quality PCM, but still you leave the DSD domain. So you want to minimize that as much as possible.
Sure.
And the true artists, the true recording engineers, like I mentioned the name before, who unfortunately passed away tragically, Michael Bishop, he was an artist in this. And it was fantastic what he was able to produce with placing the microphones correctly. And that's still the art. And if you do that correctly, DSD has a way to transfer that to your listening room.
Sure. Now, I would be very curious to get your take on transferring analog, whatever the master that's used, whether it's a safety backup or whatever, transferring that to DSD to master records from. How do you feel about that?
Well, DSD is, and there are certain variations or many variations of DSD, single, double, and quadruple. And there are some arguments there, but DSD in principle is always the first format that any A to D conversion stops in between. If you take any chip in existence, the first conversion that happens at the very front end inside the chip is a DSD conversion. It may not be 1 bit, it may be 5 bits or 6 bits, some multi-bit, but the format is still DSD.
Okay.
And why is that? The industry consensus is that this is the easiest way to convert to something digital. After that, they convert to anything that they need, mostly PCM.
Right.
That's usually done inside the chip. And that has been since 1987, when this basic topology was invented by Panasonic. And or not invented, but they started producing it and achieved really good quality with this concept. And since then, that's how every A to D chip basically works.
Wow.
So this tells you that if we take away the secondary step, the DSD to PCM conversion, you would expect higher quality because there's less processing involved.
Yeah, one less step involved, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So, that means DSD has to be a purer format and has to be closer to analog. And that's the feedback that we get from all the golden ears, including Dr. Robinson. And we did a interesting test at some point at a show where we had a Studer tape recorder with two different outputs, two analog outputs. One I fed into a preamp, and the other one I fed into the Pinot and right back into the DAC, and that went into a separate input of the same preamp. And I measured everything, level matched it with a voltmeter, and I gave 3 golden ears the remote control and didn't tell them which one is analog and which one is digital. And they heard a small difference, but it was small enough that it became kind of a matter of taste. And they argued that whatever we prefer or like best must be analog because that involves less processing. Well, they picked the wrong one.
I know. David shared that story with us on the episode when he talked a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, he was talking. That's
And
why I was hinting at it when I was talking to you about it. So,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
that's
So
great.
that demonstrates how close digital and in particular DSD can be if you're careful and do only minimal processing, very
Sure.
little. However,
Now we're talking specifically about DSD 256. Yes, quad DSD.
now that
No,
there's a topic I want to
sure.
touch on, and 256 DSD 256 has its merits in the A to D converter.
Okay.
Because there is a loop filter, it goes around. There's a loop filter, and that delay in the loop filter has to be as short as possible. And with
Makes sense.
256, you only have one clock cycle delay, and 256 is a much higher clock, and it's 11.2 megahertz. So that delay is much shorter than anything below that.
Sure.
So you want to have as much sample rate or high sample rate as possible to achieve that. However, and it's always in life. There's no free lunch.
You're so
So
right.
yeah, and you can imagine, or you remember, the pixel war stories in cameras, digital cameras. My
Absolutely.
camera has 6 megapixels, so it must be better than the 3 megapixels and so forth. And now they have 25 megapixels, so it must be better than 16 megapixels. Well, not entirely true, because a 6 megapixel camera really didn't need any post processing.
Okay.
The signal to noise ratio of a single pixel element was enough, so it could be processed right away. But the smaller the pixels got, the higher, the lower the signal to noise ratio, the higher the noise becomes. The noise always stays constant, but the signal level comes down if you reduce the size of the pixels.
Okay, that makes sense.
The same thing with DSD. The noise always stays the same. Now you start at 64 FS, single rate DSD, and the signal to noise ratio is something like that. Now, if you go to 128, it comes down. You go to 256, it comes further down. And at some point, you're hitting the noise level with the signal, and you need heavy-duty processing to extract the signal out of the noise floor.
Well, that's not a good thing necessarily.
That's right. So in 256, that noise is already too close for comfort, too close to the signal. And you do need post-processing before you can convert to analog. Most chips or chip manufacturers already realize that, and they convert everything to PCM before they go to analog.
Yeah.
And they never notice that. And if you use one of those chips, then you just think you're converting directly from 256 DSD to analog, and everything sounds wonderful. But that's not entirely true. You go through PCM steps, and in that step, you basically filter everything out that is the advantage of DSD, and then you don't hear the difference anymore.
Yeah.
So there is a sweet spot, and I published a paper about that with a lot more technical details about it. There's a sweet spot. 64 FS was, was that almost 30 years ago when that was invented. It was a little bit too close to the 20 kilohertz hearing threshold.
Sure.
And it already started rising with the noise.
Okay.
It was good, but it was a little bit close to the thresholds. 128 FS made everything so wide open, so comfortable. We didn't have to really pay too much attention to edges and filter slopes and so forth. It was a really nice format. 256 came along. It didn't really make a big difference, because whether the filter threshold is at 40 kilohertz or 80 kilohertz, who cares?
Okay, that makes sense.
Well, it doesn't matter. At 40 kilohertz, yeah, we do have some transient behaviors and responses there, but we can't really point to it because we can't test it with sine waves, steady state sine waves, because nobody hears at 40 kilohertz.
Right, right.
But transients, that's different. And so, the advantage of going to 256 wasn't really that great.
Interesting.
Exactly, for the DAC.
That's
But as
very interesting.
in the A to D, there is definitely a merit and there's an advantage. So what this all means is for archiving, for A to D conversion, definitely 256. But on the DAC side, if you're not careful, you may just ruin the whole thing.
Wow.
You have to be careful with 256, converting that to analog. You can convert that to 128 FS, and then if you do a straight DSD to analog conversion, it becomes basically just a straight wire.
Wow.
128 FS, you can feed that into your headphone, you will hear perfect audio.
That is fascinating stuff, Andreas. Thank you so much. I didn't know any of that.
So the sweet spot really is at 128 FS, and
Wow.
it's kind of like your 6 megapixels camera. There was not a whole lot of post-processing necessary. It was just straight through because the signal to noise was so healthy, so good, didn't need anything.
What a great analogy, buddy. Thank you so much for sharing it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, maybe that's a good place to end this week. What do you think?
Perfect, yes.
Andreas, I can't thank you enough. That last analogy was really, really mind-blowing. I had no idea. I just assumed incorrectly 256 had more advantages. So it's really cool to know these things, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like with PCs also, there was the megahertz, the gigahertz mania. Everybody wanted to have a faster PC. Same thing with the cameras, same thing with audio. The higher you go, yes, the closer you get to analog, but eventually you pay the price.
The trade-offs start to come into play.
That's right, yeah.
Andreas, thank you so much, buddy.
Thank you.
It's been great chatting with you. I look forward to our next talk.
Let's do that.
All right, sir.
All right.
Take care.
You. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Andreas, thank you so very much for sharing all this information and your wonderful insights. Your willingness to help illuminate what has been a very controversial and clearly misunderstood subject is not only genuinely appreciated, but it is highly commendable. Thank you so very much for helping us all make better sense of what has been a very confusing and unclear topic till now. And thank you for taking the time to drop by today. Please click the subscribe and notify buttons if you haven't already. Be sure to share your comments and questions. And please don't forget to like and share links with your favorite episodes with your friends or on social media. Further information on supporting my channel may be found in today's description section or at my website, theaudioanalyst.com. Please stay safe and keep the music playing. Till next time, cheers.